So in this video, I'm going to give you some insight into a training program or just a full body training day of two of my football athletes that I work with right now. So at the beginning, we have their warm up. Generally speaking, for the warm up, I like to go with just a full body warm up. Oh, I forgot to mention, you're going to see a lot of dance breaks from Derrick here. but so I like to go with a full body warm up in general, just generally speaking, especially since they're going to be doing a full body session. But also I incorporate whatever I found in the assessment. So if it's like tight hips that are wound up, if it's some hip stability that needs some work, if it's shoulder mobility, I might incorporate that inside of the warm up in order to save some time as we're performing the workouts as well. So that we're pretty much tackling two things at once. We're getting the body prepped and ready for the movements of the day, and then we're also tackling one of the areas that we want to find some improvement in. So their full body warm up here, they're doing some rows, some single leg hinging movements, some pressing movements as well. And yeah, once again, we're doing a full body warm up. So the first two movements of the day, I generally go with, especially for athletes, I go with a power movement and then I go with a core movement. So the power movement here is going to be this single leg box jump. So they're doing 3 reps on one leg and then they're going to be doing 3 reps on the opposite side leg. So they're doing 3 sets of that as well. Make sure, especially if you're really trying to produce power, that you're resting appropriately. Going through 3 reps and 3 sets in less than a minute or so, or taking a minute break and getting right back to it, especially if you get some fatigue afterwards, you're no longer really developing power. So you have to make sure that you're resting appropriately. The other thing to remember here is also the amount of reps that you're doing. So if, let's just say you were doing med ball throws, maybe you can get away with doing more repetitions because of the ability to continuously produce power when throwing a med ball, depending on how light it is. But if you're doing plyometric movements, if you're doing weighted movements such as power cleans or trap bar jumps, then I typically stick to 3 to 5 repetitions. That is where I usually see power output stay the highest. If you go higher than that, as far as repetitions, generally the power output tends to drop and we're no longer really tapping into all of the fast twitch or high threshold motor units that we possibly can. Mainly kicking in those muscles and working those muscles that we're trying to work to get more explosive, basically. So I also superset this with a core movement. So the core movement for today is a weighted plank with reach. This is one of my favorite core movements to add in. As a little side note, I typically don't believe that you have to do isolated core exercises. But with that in mind, I still put it in there just to get a little extra isolated work, just in case we need a little bit more of a buffer room for that. But typically speaking, if you're doing a lot of single leg rows, if you're doing single leg rows, if you're doing single leg rear footed elevated split squats, or if you're doing split squats in general, or just single leg movements, or if you're doing rows in general, then you're really going to get a good training effect from that as far as core work goes. So you're going to get some anti-rotation, stuff of that nature. But I'll say the main thing is to keep in mind that isolated core work isn't specifically necessary, but you can add it in just to have more of a buffer. But the next movements, or the next 2 movements that we have, is going to be the box squats, box back squats, and then also barbell rows. So right now for them, especially since they're doing a lot of field work at the moment, I like to introduce box squats just because it's going to be less stressful on the legs overall. So they're still getting some good strength and power development from this movement without overly fatiguing the legs as well. Also football players, like, they tend to need more overall strength comparatively speaking to other sports, because some of the fighters I work with, they'll hardly ever, if ever, touch a back squat, mainly because of the amount of stress it can put on the shoulders, depending on the range of motion that you do have. And I found with some of them that we don't necessarily have a lot of shoulder mobility, so we need to limit the amount of stress that's going to be put on the shoulders. And then also the barbell bend over row. Once again, just another compound movement just to get a good amount of upper back strength going on for their workout. The next two things that we have here is going to be the close grip bench press, and it's going to be supersetted with the single arm or single leg RDL. So the close grip bench press that they're doing, I like close grip bench press just because it's going to be a little less stressful on the shoulder, comparatively speaking, to a regular grip bench press. So the shoulders are a little closer to the side. So if you already have some shoulder issues or some impingement, it may help out a little bit more on that. And then it also works the triceps a little bit more, or the arms a little bit more than it is going to be working on the pecs. So it's more of a, you can say, a functional deal when it comes to that. But kind of getting into the, I told you, you're going to see a lot of dance breaks. So kind of getting into the rep schemes that they have here. So during this cycle right now, we got sets of 3 with 8 repetitions, and then the final set is going to be a plus set. So basically as many reps as possible, with 8 being the minimum. So doing this type of rep scheme is going to allow us to see during the next week what weights that we should possibly be doing. So let's just say, for instance, you do 225 on the bench press and you get to 8 reps on each set, and then finally on the last set you do 15 reps. That lets us know that you should have probably went heavier for this week. So next week, now we can start off heavier, and then we can really push it. So we're just making sure from week to week we're not wasting our time doing weights that have no real effect on the outcome that we're looking for, which is strength and power development. So once again, and I also keep it to 3 sets, especially since you don't necessarily need as much. From what I've seen, like, you don't really need that many sets in order to build strength or maintain the strength that you already have, especially if the emphasis is on a certain thing. So if you're just trying to maintain your strength and you're trying to cut down on weight, or if you're just trying to maintain your strength for the season or whatnot, then you don't necessarily have to do a ton of sets. And in all honesty, it will be counterproductive to do a multitude of sets in your training program. To do a multitude of sets, that'll take away from your performance on the field, as well as just make you more fatigued and not have the ability to recover as well as you possibly could when going into the next game, or when going into your field work, or whatever it may be. So we do this full body session 2 times a week right now, mainly because that's all the time we have available to get together. But once again, 2 times a week, doing this full body session the way we're doing, like, they're increasing the weights that they're using from week to week, and the amount of power output that they're getting from that. So yeah, it doesn't take much. It's kind of counter intuitive, or counter to what you've probably been told before, but it's effective. So that's going to be it for this one. I'll see you in the next video.